Hello friends, this video on Kingdom Plantae Part 6 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Let us now try to understand the process of reproduction in algae, because reproduction is one of the important aspects of every living organism. Now in reproduction they will reproduce both asexually as well as sexually. Now by this time we all know what is asexual reproduction, what is sexual reproduction. I am not going to talk about all those things now in detail because I have already spoken about all this in class 9th. So asexual reproduction, we need just one parent. In sexual reproduction, we need two parents which will fuse together to form the new organism. So let us first talk about the asexual reproduction in algae. Now there are different modes of asexual reproduction. Fragmentation is one of the mode of reproduction in algae. What happens in fragmentation? The parent organism breaks it. Fragment. What do you mean by fragment? Fragment means pieces. So now here in this case what will happen? One organism will break into different pieces and each of those pieces will give rise to a new individual. Sounds interesting, right? But that is how it happens in case of some of the algae. Let us take the example of Spirogyra, which reproduce asexually by fragmentation. So now if this Spirogyra breaks into multiple species on maturity, that means when a Spirogyra becomes mature, it breaks into different pieces. Now so you see the body got actually divided into 3 pieces. And each of these pieces are then capable of giving rise to a new organism. So you see, this is the first portion, this is the middle portion, and this is the last piece. Each of these pieces were capable of giving rise to a new organism altogether. So what do you see? There is just one parent involved here. You do not need 2 parents. And how many daughter organisms are produced? 3 daughter organisms are produced. So this is what happens in fragmentation. Another mode of asexual reproduction in algae is multiple fission. What is fission? Fission means splitting. So multiple fission, that means one organism splits into multiple organisms. So in multiple fission, multiple means many. So that means many new individuals are formed. How are so many individuals formed? By division of the nucleus. So the nucleus divides repeatedly to form multiple organisms, and that is known as multiple fission. This multiple fission is most commonly seen in algae like Chlamydomonas. So it takes place during unfavorable conditions. So this type of fission occurs only during unfavorable condition. Now how does it take place? What happens is that during unfavorable conditions, cyst formation takes place. What is cyst formation? An outer covering will develop during unfavorable condition. Let us suppose if this is the cell. Now in Chlamydomonas there is one cell. Let us consider this is that one cell. Now when the environmental conditions are unfavorable, this cell wants to protect itself. How does it protect itself? By creating an outer covering. This outer covering is the cyst. So this is the cyst. So the cyst protects it from the unfavorable condition. Now what happens inside? So inside this cyst, multiple fission takes place. That's because the division of the nucleus happens. Now when the nucleus divides, the organism divides into multiple organisms. So from one organism inside, now you have multiple cells inside. Now then what happens? This cyst breaks up and it gives rise to so many organisms. So everything started with one organism and then you ended up getting so many organisms, right? So this is how multiple fission take place. There is another way of asexual reproduction, that is by spore formation. So let us see what is this. By production of asexual spores. So what are these asexual spores? Now these are a type of spores which are produced by the algae, and then those spores under favorable conditions, they germinate to form a new organism. You can compare this with how you plant a seed. So when you put that seed, give it sufficient water, keep it in light and all, what happens? A new plant grows from that seed. So similarly here also the spores is nothing but it is similar to a seed which under favorable condition germinate to form a new organism. So these asexual spores which are produced are known as the zoospores. So the asexual spores produced in case of algae are known as zoospores, and the part of the plant which produces these asexual spores is known as zoosporangium. So zoosporangium is the reproductive part, and it produces the spores called zoospores, and these zoospores germinate to form a new algae. So this is how the entire cycle takes place. Let us suppose if this is a mature algae. Now with passage of time, the zoosporangium part will actually give rise to the zoospores. So these are the zoospores. Now then these zoospores will germinate to form the new organisms. So the zoospores will germinate to form new organism. So here the zoospores are produced. Right, and this portion is the zoosporangium which produces the zoospores. Now talking about the zoospores, these zoospores are motile, that is they can move from one place to another. They are motile, that itself means that they are flagellated, because if they have flagella only then they can move. So if they do not have flagella they cannot move. So they are flagellated motile zoospores. So since they are flagellated, so these zoospores when they are produced by the zoosporangium they can reach to some other place because they are motile, or they can carry it away to some other place by some agent. So when they reach that place and under favorable condition they can germinate to form a new algae. So this is how the algae reproduce asexually by spore formation. So these are some of the methods of asexual reproduction: fragmentation, multiple fission and spore formation. Okay, so now let us look at the sexual reproduction in algae. So we already covered asexual reproduction, but let us see what happens in sexual reproduction. Whenever I talk of sexual reproduction, we will have to talk about two gametes. What are gametes? They are the sex cells. We need two sex cells which will fuse with each other to form a new organism. So in order to study that, we will have to know what are the two gametes in case of algae. So sexual reproduction is a fusion of two gametes. Now there are many different types of algae based upon whether these two gametes are similar to each other or they are different from each other. So the first type is isogamous. Iso means same. The word iso means same. That means both gametes are similar in size. So if both the gametes are similar in size, that type of algae is known as isogamous. However, the size only has to be similar. Now, they both can be motile, both can be non-motile. One can be motile, one cannot be motile. So that is flexible, but their size should be similar. So they are known as isogamous. Examples of isogamous algae is Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra. So if you look at Chlamydomonas, in Chlamydomonas, both the gametes are of similar size, but the gametes are motile. So the gametes are motile and they are of similar size. Whereas in case of Spirogyra, the gametes are non-motile. That is, they cannot move from one place to another, but they are of similar size. So these Spirogyra and Chlamydomonas are examples of isogamous algae. The next type is anisogamous. Aniso, that is not same. So gametes are dissimilar in size. So if one is larger, the other one has to be smaller. So again, example of anisogamous is some species of Chlamydomonas. So now see, whatever examples I am giving you right now, when I say Chlamydomonas, Chlamydomonas is not a species, it is a genus. So even in that genus, you have many different species of Chlamydomonas. We have already spoken about genus and species in our previous lesson, right? So we all know what it is. So some species of Chlamydomonas are isogamous, whereas some species of Chlamydomonas are anisogamous. That is, they have gametes of different sizes. And the third one is oogamous. Oogamous is one gamete is large and non-motile, while the other is small and motile. So basically this oogamous is a combination of isogamous and anisogamous. So here the size is different. So one is large, the other one is small. But in isogamous and anisogamous, only the size mattered. Their motility didn't matter. It can be motile, it can be non-motile. But in this case, one gamete has to be large and non-motile. The large one will be non-motile and the other one will have to be small and motile. So a very specification is given what kind of gamete it has to be. So then they are known as oogamous. The example of oogamous algae is volvox. So in case of volvox, there are two gametes. One gamete will be large and non-motile, that is non-flagellated, it cannot move. The other one will be small and motile, small and it can move. Can you tell me another organism where you have similar type of gametes, that is one gamete is large and non-motile while the other gamete is small and motile? Exactly, human beings. In human beings also, sperms are small and they are motile, they can move, whereas the egg is large and non-motile. We have spoken about these details in our reproduction lesson of class 10th. Okay, so these are the different types of algae based upon their reproductive. So let us see how the sexual reproduction take place in an algae. So in this case, what will happen? There are two gametes. Let us say one is a male gamete and the other one is a female gamete. So let us say this is a male gamete and the male gamete is known as antherozoid. So this is a male gamete. There is another female gamete. Let us say the female gamete is the egg. So what will happen? These two gametes will fuse together. So fusion will take place. And as a result of fusion, a zygote will be formed. Right? Now this zygote then will release the spores. So the spores are released. What are those spores? The spores are the zoospores. Now these zoospores, what are these? These are nothing but they are capable of germinating. So now they will germinate. So the spores will germinate. And this will give rise to a new colony. So I have taken the example of this oogamous, that is volvox. So in volvox a colony is formed. So a new colony will be formed and again this new colony later will give rise to a male gamete and a female gamete and this cycle will keep on continuing. Right? So this is the life cycle or the sexual life cycle of an algae. So this is how this cycle keeps on continuing. So now thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.